I was born in Dover, Ohio, and lived there in the Dover, Philly area until I was 15 years old, and then came to Massillon.
And what brought you to Massillon?
My mother died when I was 2 years old, and my sister Pat was 4 months old. And my sister and I then lived with my mother's parents, who were, I love talking about this kind of thing. He was Wade Hampton Golden, and she was Mittie Golden. They were both born in 1879, and they were both the children of slaves. And they came to Dover in 1920, trying to get out of the South, and they came to Dover in 1920. So what happened was that in 1955, my grandfather died, and my grandmother, her eyes were real bad. Her eyes had gotten bad.
Okay.
And so we came to Massillon here to be with my father. With my father. That's what so came here in 1956. Came here.
Did you get to know your grandparents well then?
Oh my goodness, yes, yes. I was 15 years old when we left. Yeah, knew them very well. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lot of memories of Dover, or is it mostly Massillon?
Oh my goodness, my goodness. I think about the Dover, Philly area every day. Every day. Again, I lived there till I was 15 years old. I think about it a lot. I had thought of living there, but I decided not to do that because I don't know anybody there now. I know a few blacks that are down there. You know, I still interact with some of the black folks down there, but the other people around, you know, I don't know anybody, and I used to know just loads of people in New Philly. You know, I used to know tons of people, and I don't now. You know.
So when you moved to Massillon, did you then graduate from Washington High School?
I certainly did.
What class were you?
1960. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you play any sports or have extracurricular activities?
No, no. There's a story I like to tell about. I was a year behind in school. I should have graduated in 1959 rather than 1960, but I should have graduated in 1959. But my grandparents were both the kind of people where they didn't talk about anything at all related to learning. And so all of a sudden my grandmother came to me and said, you're going to go to school here in a couple of weeks. I didn't even know what school was. She says, I have to give you shots. You know, you'll have to go and get some shots. And so we, you know, I did that with her, and then I went to school in New Philly. They're in New Philly. I had no idea what in the world I was supposed to be there for. You know, I didn't know anything at all. You know, and it was when I think about it now, it was kind of funny because I didn't know anything. I mean, I didn't know. I just didn't know anything related to school, you know, what was going on in school.
So it's not like you were reading books when you were little,
Yeah,
it was just like suddenly
no.
you were thrown into learning. Okay.
Yeah. And what was amusing about that is that after a few months going to school, the teacher worked with me for a while, trying to get me to be part of the class that knew something. And after a few months, I started going, and I would just put my head down and go to sleep, and the teacher wouldn't say anything, you know. So what happened was, after the school year was finished, and I went back to school in September, and I walked up to the second grade. The second grade was on the second floor. The first grade was on the first floor. And I go in there, and she said, "You're not supposed to be here. You didn't pass the first grade, you know." So it's one of the things I like to tell about, because I didn't mind that. You know, I went back. Now I am really interested in school, and I like school. And for the next many years, I was all about learning. You know, there were things that happened with me that I never talked about before. But down there in New Philly, when I was in the sixth grade, I remember it was put out that I was the best student in mathematics, you know, around, you know. And I was always a great student, you know, real smart, real smart, you know.
Okay. So when you graduated, class of 1960, what happened next?
I went to the Air Force. And I was in the Air Force for 4 years and 9 months. Got out of the Air Force, and I worked at the Timken Company for 18 months. And I was hired then I wanted to be a police officer, and so I became a police officer.
What inspired you to become a police officer?
Oh, I don't know what inspired me, but I certainly wanted to be a part of the police department, you know. and so I became a police officer. And shortly after I became a police officer, then I decided to go to college because I had not been able to go to college before. There was just no money around for me to go to college, so I started going to college, and again, I did very well, you know. Oh my goodness, you know, my life has been really good as an adult, you know. As an adult, it's been very, very good.
So you, I assume then you applied to the Massillon Police Department in what year?
67. 1967. Yeah. I became a police officer in 1967. Yeah.
And so, forgive me for not knowing the hierarchy, but you started out as like a patrolman?
Yes.
Okay.
Patrolman. Aha! And while I was on the police department, I talked to 2 or 3 police chiefs about the term patrolman. I said that term patrolman is something that comes out of slavery. But you didn't know that, did you? Yes, that comes out of slavery.
Okay.
And many places around the country are now just making reference to guys on the police department as officers. You know, they've done away with that. No patrolman. But Massillon decided they wanted to stay patrolman. And when I would say something about that to the 2 or 3 police chiefs, they wouldn't respond to me in any kind of way.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. But I enjoyed being on the police department so much. And if I were 25 years old again, I would do the same thing. I know I would become a police officer again. And something I'm very proud of is that I worked in criminal justice for 43 years.
That's wonderful. Did you have an area of focus that did you become a detective, or did you?
Yes, I became a detective. Yeah. Yeah, I became a detective. Yeah. And when I retired, I was a detective. You know.
And was it correct that you were the first black detective to retire from the police department? Is that? I think your daughter said that at some point.
The first black detective
To retire.
I don't know about that, you know. I don't know about that, you know. But the big thing about me is that I was the first black person to retire from the police department.
That's what it was first.
Mm-hmm. I was the first black person to retire. Mm-hmm.
So I know that you were involved in the Spring Hill Board of Directors.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you want to, share your experience on that organization?
I always loved Spring Hill. and went there and became, I eventually went there and became a board member. And you're talking to a guy who could talk for hours.
I know, that's why this is part one.
Who could talk for hours. And I laugh because Spring Hill was big for on the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad. One of the things I had said that I was going to do when I retired from the police department was that I was going to become a professor. And Kent State, wanted me to be a professor. But I said no. I don't want and can't be a professor. You would not allow me to say the things that need to be said about all of the many bad things that have gone on in this country by criminal justice. Horrible things, and the entire criminal justice field really began after the Civil War. And lots of bad things were done to people. Well, and of course to black people, bad things were done, and
Still being done.
yeah, they set up laws that related to black people only, and so, as a professor, then you would have to, I wanted to talk about all that kind of stuff. And let people know, the terrible things that have gone on in this country. But at the same time, the United States has been good in many, many ways, and has done lots of very good things. And I love the United States, and always have. But yeah, I like Spring Hill a lot,
And
yeah.
how many years were you on the board?
I don't know. I think 12 or 15, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I live at Spring Hills. I live in a Spring Hill settlement that's behind Spring Hill. There's houses up there, and I bought a house up there. And I like it a lot. And yeah, Spring Hill was good. I care about Spring Hill because what they were doing with people and Massillon changed a lot. Yeah. Back in during slavery, Massillon was known for helping people. And there were several people besides Spring Hill that were helping people, you know. And there are things written about this stuff, you know. Changes really took place after the Civil War was over. After 1865 is when lots of changes started taking place here. And because I was a police officer and around Massillon, I mean, I talked to thousands of people here, and there are some very negative kinds of ways of thinking around Massillon here. Very negative.
I was trying to move to better, though, right? We're trying to right some of those wrongs and hopefully get better, right? Hopefully.
Well, you know, I retired from the police department. It's been 31 years ago, so I don't know what's going on now, you know. I don't know what's going on, but I know that there were lots of problems with schools. With the schools in Massillon were just terrible, and it was known to people that the schools in Massillon were just terrible, you know. They weren't doing right. When I came to Massillon here in 1956, you know, I could tell right away, you know, that these schools weren't good at all, you know. I mean, some of the teachers, it was just ridiculous what some of these teachers were like, you know.